Hey everybody, welcome to another Intro to HTML video. In the previous video, what we had was a basic multi-column layout and we provided the CSS Reset to it. So it made all of the fonts the exact same size, took away all margins and padding and all that kind of stuff. And it made the page unreadable and unusable, really. In this video, we're going to start addressing Whitespace using the box model. So what you need to have is you need to have your HTML open in Notepad++. It should be the basic two-column layout that we built previously. It should have the Web CSS Reset applied to it. And we're going to start digging in. I'm going to make a little comment here. Whitespace styles. Here. I oftentimes put little dividers in my style sheets so I can see where things are. This one is going to introduce the CSS reset, and when I come down to this one, I can tell that it's going to be my Whitespace styles. I'm going to start by providing a wrapper for the whole page. We've done this before. I'm going to make a div, open it. Div ID wrapper, and then I'm going to close it all the way down below my footer. So it wraps up everything. Opens above the header, closes below the footer. I'm just making a comment, close wrapper div. I'm going to tab everything over really quickly so that it's all nested nicely. And now we've got a wrapper. If we saved this and looked at it in the browser, it wouldn't look any different because, as you know, divs are totally unstyled. So let's give it a little bit of style. I'm going to go number symbol wrapper or ID wrapper, and I'm going to give it a width. I'm going to start off with 85% width. There is no one correct overall width for a page. Different pages have different widths. Some pages make use of a full entire browser width. Some of them constrain it. I'm going to start constrained at 85% width and see what it looks like. Well, that's about the width that we've got right there at 85%. It looks okay, so I'm going to keep it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give equal margins on the left and right side. And we know how to do this, margin 0 auto. And this will give us the equal margins on left and right side, automatic margins on top and bottom, and it will make it so that our page will sit nicely in the center. There we go. All right, now that's just a start. Next thing that I want to address is the columns here. I do not want those columns touching one another. They are, the content is touching the edge of the boxes, and that's kind of bad. So what I might do is I might provide some padding on the insides of those columns. If we think back to how we made those columns, we called them main content and sidebar. So I might go into these styles right here, and I might give them some padding. I'm going to start with just an arbitrary value and then push and pull pixels from there. I'm going to start with 2%. You might notice that I'm using percents here. I'm going to stick with percent-based designs from here on out. And I'll talk about why in just a little bit. 2%. Save it and it should look great, right? Wait a minute. It doesn't look great at all. What just happened? Well, I added 2% padding to the left and right of my main content and to the left and right of my sidebar. When we think about the box model's overall width consists of the sum total of all margins, padding, width, and borders. All of those combined give us the total width of a box. So I just made my main content and my sidebar an extra 4% wider. So let's think about this. Main content was 60% wide. Then I added 2 to the left and 2 to the right. So now it's 64% wide. Well, to make this work, I have to take 4% off somewhere. So I'm going to take it off the width. I'll go to 56%, 56% and see if this works. This should snap back into place, right? Well, it didn't work. This got narrower, but this didn't go up next to it. Well, I need to make sure that the overall width of my two columns does not exceed 100%. Right now, this makes up 60%, but this makes up 44%. So I need to take 4% off the width of my sidebar as well. 36% width. Save it, refresh it, and bang, it works. That looks great. I've got my two columns sitting side by side. I've got a little padding on both of them. That's good for now. I'm going to keep that as is. Now, let's think about the spaces in between paragraphs. The paragraphs are all crunched together. By default, in most browsers, the paragraphs have a little bit of margin on top and bottom. So let's add some. I'm going to go down below here. No, you know what? I'm going to go right up here under the wrapper. And I'm going to set the margins top and bottom to, I don't know, let's start with something arbitrary, 2%. And then left and right are going to be 0. Save it. Look at it in the browser. Oops, that's why it didn't work. Why didn't you tell me I had a typo? M-A-R-G-I-N. We all make typos. See how quickly I found that one? It only took me 2 or 3 clicks. Some of you might take a long time to find typos. Sometimes it takes me forever to find typos. There we go. I'm going to leave it in the video just so you know. I'm not perfect all the time, just some of the time. There we go. So I added 2% margins on the tops and bottoms of all my paragraphs. So I've got a little bit of space there. This is okay. I'm starting to space things out a little bit. Now, I might add some margin on the tops and bottoms of my H2s, maybe even both H2s and H1s. And I'm going to start with something arbitrary once again. I'm just going to go with 2% and 0. Oftentimes I use 2% because it seems like a good baseline that I can tweak later on. And there we go. We got a little bit of extra padding in between my H1s and my H2s. It's giving us a little bit of extra space. All right, now the page has a little bit more room to breathe. It feels a little bit more open. It doesn't feel so cramped. I'm going to use this in a future video and build on it a little bit more. I'm going to start talking about the typography. I'm going to start talking about things like optimal line length. I'm going to start talking about contrast of fonts. I'm going to talk about appropriate fonts for body copy versus appropriate fonts for heading. And then we're going to throw a nav in there as well and play around with that a bit. Thanks for watching, and I hope you've got a little bit better grasp on how to deal with Whitespace after we've handled a reset.